This makes my blood boil. I cannot believe that we are seeing yet another case of the NHS pushing somebody out of their position because of a disagreement over trans. Amy Gallagher has tweeted, "I can finally talk about this. The NHS have been investigating me for the last 14 months because of a tweet I made mocking the transgender flag. I was moved away from patients and put in an admin role for my gender critical views. I'm suing them." Let's just take a look at that tweet that she is in trouble for, so you can see the McDonald's pride flag there that she has tweeted a picture of, saying hell. Now, before we look at the details of her case that she has tweeted in this thread, let's just remind ourselves of what the NHS has been up to as of late. So this nurse here has been suspended after investigation because she called a transgender paedophile who was visiting for an appointment from a male prison. She called him Mr. She has lost her job. What happened here? He was having an appointment to do with something with his urinary tract, i.e. something happening in his male parts, a male specific issue. She left the room with the patient and called one of her colleagues to explain what his problem was, and it was very much a male specific issue, so she needed to clarify that it was a man, and she referred to him as Mr. The patient then overheard this conversation, and when she came back in the room, he was absolutely furious that she had supposedly misgendered him. And she said, "I'm sorry, but because of my Christian views, I'm not going to call you a woman. I'm not going to call you a she, her. I'm not able to do that, but I can talk to you using your name rather than saying he or Mr. to your face." And he called her the N-word multiple times, and he lunged at her. He essentially tried to attack her. He should be the one in the wrong. If you ask me, his actions are way worse than hers. But oh no, she had to take the blame for this whole situation, didn't she? Because she had the audacity to misgender a person with male parts visiting for an appointment from a male prison. You cannot make this up. And also, we of course have the nurse Sandy Peggy, who was suspended for being upset about having to share a changing room with a biological male. She has been having to go through this whole tribunal because she didn't want to share a changing room with Beth Upton, who is a born biological male who was using the women's changing rooms. Okay, that is where the NHS is at with their level of wokeness, and clearly it continues. It will be very interesting to see what happens with all three of these cases now that we have had the Supreme Court ruling. Will the NHS give in and stop this wackery and wokery, or will they fight it to the death and carry on and suspend people from their jobs who are perfectly capable of taking care of patients and doing a good job just because of whatever their views on trans are? So let's take a look at Amy Gallagher's thread here. Let's see what she said. She says, "This is the tweet I wrote: hell above a trans pride flag with McDonald's signage on it. I also criticised non-binary art and tweeted, non-binary essentially means ugly. The NHS trust I was working for told me this likely went against their trans and non-binary policy. Inclusivity of everything but opinion, it would seem." During a hostile investigation interview, I was asked if patients could trust me as a nurse, because I do not believe they could be born in the wrong body. I was asked if I thought I had betrayed patient trust by criticising gender ideology. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but this woman does not pose a threat to patients because of her views on gender ideology, okay? She does not pose a threat to them. She's not going to harm them, okay? She is a nurse who, if I was a nurse and someone came in who was, very, clearly presenting themselves as some super woke lefty, would I give them worse treatment, or would I be rude to them or harm them in some way because of who they are? No, of course, they're a human being, and my job as a nurse or a doctor would be to just take care of them as a human being, like I would any other person of any other, view or, supposed gender identity coming into my practice, right? I mean, it's just beyond belief that they would assume that it causes a danger to patients if someone has, views, okay? If you put me in a room with a left-wing individual, I'm not going to be horrible to them just because of their point of view. I'm like, they're a human being, okay? And if I was, serving a customer in a shop and they were a left-wing person and I'm a more right-wing person, would I not treat them as well as because of their views? No, of course. If I was serving them a coffee or whatever the hell it was, I'd serve them the coffee just like I do every other individual. Okay? It's just beyond belief that we live in a society where we think that two people, engaging with each other that have different views is somehow dangerous. I mean, what the hell is going on? What the NHS thinking here? She goes on to say, I was told that some staff did not feel comfortable working with me, so I felt I had no choice but to resign. The NHS have only recently dropped the investigation into me. Please help me fight back. Read about my case. Share and donate if you can. Following the Supreme Court decision that sex means biological sex and recent case of Higgs Foster's Farmer School, this case will test whether the NHS now accepts the rights of women to have gender critical views without being investigated. So there we go. Absolutely crazy. Good to hear that it sounds like the investigation there has eventually been dropped, but the fact that she had to go through this in the first place is just absolutely beyond belief. You should be able to practice as a nurse or a doctor regardless of your views on gender identity, okay? I mean, to qualify as a doctor, let's say you want to be a GP, right? You want to be a GP. It's going to take you, like a decade to properly qualify to be a GP, not to mention all the student debt you're going to have from all of that training and studying, right? Imagine you go through all of that. You give away a decade of your life and gather all of this debt to become a doctor, to then just lose your job over some tweet and not be able to practice as a GP again. Can you imagine that? What a slap in the face that would be. What a joke the NHS is at the moment. We need to get all this wackery and wokery out of it. Get rid of all this stupid DEI officers there. They're a waste of money. Wes Streeting, he says that he wants to cut all the waste out of the NHS. Let's start there. Let's get rid of all the DEI officers, okay, as a start. Let's go with that. But I doubt Labour will have the tenacity and the strength to do that. So let's see what happens. Anyway, I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to Reasoned if you've not already.